Hey, welcome once again to this edition of The Golden Rule. My name is Barry Schroeder, and the Golden Rule is referring to something that Jesus said. You know who Jesus is, right? He's God in the flesh, Emmanuel, God with us. And he said, therefore, all things whatever you would that men should do to you, do you even so to them. And another way of saying that is, treat other people the way you want them to treat you. And so on this program here, we're trying our level best to provide you an opportunity of receiving from the Lord, from us on our program here. I usually have guests I don't have today because I got something very special I want to talk to you about. But just a reminder, we have these yard signs which we're making available to all the people in the community. We're hoping that everybody will put one up in their yards. Everybody that loves Jesus anyway and is not ashamed of him, you'll put up a yard sign in your yard. We want the whole community to be thinking about God. And we do that by reminding them with things like yard signs. You know, there was a day in our country when all of our schools and all of our government offices displayed prominently the Ten Commandments. And when that was happening, there was very minimal behavior that was considered yucky because people were being reminded constantly of God's expectations from us. And, you know, and I heard one opponent of having the Ten Commandments in schools, in the public schools, he said, whoa, you know, if we do that, the kids might think that they have to keep them. Oh, wouldn't that be terrible? That they're not supposed to kill anybody. They're not supposed to lie. They're not supposed to steal. That would be terrible, wouldn't it? If they had forced those ideas down these kids' throats. So we took them out, and now what are they doing? They're killing people. They're lying. They're stealing. It's a no-brainer, folks. When you present God boldly, it serves as a repressant of evil. So today I want to talk to you about something very, very special. We've mentioned it before, but it's entitled In His Steps. This is a book that was written in 1897 by a man named Charles Sheldon. And at the time he wrote it, he had no idea that over 125 years later, it would still be in print, not only in print, but it's never been out of print. It's constantly be reissued and reissued and reissued. Over 50 million people have read this book, and it's been translated into over 40 different languages. In His Steps. From this book came the expression, what would Jesus do? And I have here my handy dandy little What Would Jesus Do bracelet. Some of you are old enough to remember that back in perhaps the 70s and the 80s, there was a major revival of this question, what would Jesus do? And this book was circulated nationwide by a large-scale ministry, and people were talking about In His Steps. So, we're bringing the play back. I say we're bringing the play back. We're bringing the play into Detroit Lakes. It's never been here as a play. People have read the book, but they've never seen it in dramatic form. And we are having so much fun with this play. But let me read you what one expert said from the Topeka, Kansas newspaper. He viewed the play and he says, you know, in addition to being excellent entertainment, this message has the potential of changing an individual's life or even the life of an entire community. And that's what we're all about. Our community needs changing. And I'm not picking on our community. All communities need changing because there's evil, there's wickedness, there's people doing yucky stuff that we don't like. And so we can stop it by becoming righteous. So in this play, we have 22 cast members, plus extras. We got a bunch of people going to be part of a rowdy mob, and we got a bunch of people going to be in the audience just going, ooh, ah, just kind of verbally responding in certain places. And you can be a part of that if you want to. Just give me a call, 972-757-0078. They'll have that number on the screen. And we can get you into the play. You get in for free. And all you got to do is sit in a chair and make a couple of responses. There's no lines to remember. There's no appearance on stage. You're simply sitting as a member of the audience. What a deal. So, the play takes place in a place called Raymond, Kansas, at the First Church of Raymond, Kansas. It's a very prestigious church, very high society level membership. And the pastor's name is Henry Maxwell. His wife is Mary Maxwell. And these roles are played by Charlie and Mickey Okeson, husband and wife team. Isn't that handy? We got a husband and wife playing a husband and a wife. Makes it a whole lot easier in some situations. So anyway, they both do an excellent job of portraying a pastor who, after having his church visited very unexpectedly by a tramp, who just comes in and interrupts the service. He says, "Hey, can I say something?" And everybody's wondering, "Who are you? What are you doing here? Who let him in?" And then he begins his little speech. And in the process of giving his speech, he nails the congregation with their hypocritical lifestyles. He says, you come to church, you're looking all fancy, you're all dressed up in your nice Sunday go-to-meeting clothes, and you nod and you smile at one another. And then you go home and lock your doors against people like me. Is that what your Jesus would do? So the whole thing is, the theme verse is 1 Peter 2:21, that we would walk in Jesus' steps. That's where the title of the book comes, In His Steps, to walk like Jesus walked. And so anyway, as the tramp is pointing these things out, the whole congregation gets convicted to the point where the pastor, even he gets convicted, because many of these people are in church for all the wrong reasons. They're there for political advantage, financial advantage, social advantage, and they really don't care that much about God. Until this tramp takes them to task, after which the pastor says, "You know what? I'm as guilty as the rest of you, but after I've heard this man speak, I feel like we need to do something about it and quit just talking about being Christians and start acting upon it." And so he forms a pledge group. And he stipulates very carefully, you cannot join this pledge group unless you agree, you take a pledge for at least 12 months, perhaps longer. You will make no decision in your life, personal life, private life, public life, big decision, little decision, without first asking yourself the question, what would Jesus do in my position? And so we got bracelets that we're wearing to remind us to ask ourselves each day, what would Jesus do in my situation? And what happens is then they take the pledge group members through a series of meetings where, they check in, hey, how did it go with you this week? And how did it go with you this week? And so in the audience, or in the pledge group, there's several different characters representing 7 different lifestyles, and one of them is a gal named Rachel Winslow. Her part is played by Hannah Kane here in Detroit Lakes, and she is referred to as a woman who has the voice of a songbird. She's just a very gifted singer, and in all her life she's had a desire to be on stage singing, making money, and getting a reputation and accolades and all the rest of it, which goes with showbiz. And so when she joins this pledge group, just shortly after she joins the pledge group, she gets an invitation from an opera company or a traveling, musical play type thing in the Chicago area, and they're inviting her to be a part of their cast. This is what she's dreamed of all of her life. But now, before she can accept this offer, this lucrative offer, this high-profile offer, she's asking herself, God has gifted me with a voice. Is that how He wants me to use it? To glorify myself, to make myself prominent? Or would He have another use for my voice? And so, I don't want to give away too much of the play, but she wrestles with that issue until she finally resolves it. So that's Rachel Winslow. Then we have Madame Page. Madame Page is a very high society, uppity, aloof woman who has no time for or interest in low-life riff-raff. Low-life riff-raff. And so, she treats the low-lifers like they're second-class citizens. And you know, through this whole play, nothing affects her. She's just as hard as nails. And she stays that way. And that's the tragic part, because the same thing is true about people today. They can hear the gospel and be confronted with the fact that they're judgmental, discriminating, all kinds of stuff. And they say, yeah, and that's the way it is. There's us and there's them. And God doesn't like that kind of behavior. He says that very, very clearly throughout the Bible. So, Madame Page just stays the way she is. But she has two wealthy grandchildren who became wealthy when their father died, leaving them an inheritance of several millions of dollars. This is 1897 right now, so think about it. Millions of dollars back then was a humongous amount of money. And so the daughter, her name is Virginia Page, and she's used to living the high society life, you know, flitting all around the world and going here and going there and buying all kinds of clothes and everything else. And now all of a sudden she's asking herself, what would Jesus do if He had access to all this money? And you'll be very interested to see how she reacts to that. Now, on the other side of the coin is her brother Rollin Page, played by Lynn Peterson. Virginia's played by Zoe Bruninga, by the way. And so Rollin, he's playing it to the hilt. He's a playboy, and he's throwing his money out with gambling and drinking and the whole bit. And it takes a little while, but after a while, Rollin starts having some second thoughts too about the money with which he's been entrusted. When I say entrusted, you know, the Bible says we don't own anything. We think we do. We think we do. But God says, I have given you certain assets. Some have more, some have less, but we all have something. And He says, I've trusted you with that to be a steward. That means you don't own it. I own it. And I'll tell you what I want to do with it. And so Rollin starts all of a sudden reevaluating his own life and asking the question, what would Jesus do in my situation? Then there's Lucian Sterling, a hard-boiled, heavy-handed, greedy, almost a mafia-type guy in the church. He attends church, but he's a phony. He's as phony as a $3 bill. And he's exploiting these grandchildren because he's the trustee for their money. And so he's concerned about what they do with their money, which he calls his money. Anyway, Lucian is an interesting character in the play. Then we have the bishop and Pastor Bruce, and then Henry Maxwell. And these three guys interact in a very, very entertaining way. They're in a spiritual hierarchy. The bishop is the bishop, and Calvin Bruce is the middleman, and Henry Maxwell is under them. And so there's a pecking order here, and it's interesting to see how when one of them decides he's going to do something that might not meet the approval of the guys up above, he's faced with the decision. Am I going to risk my position to do what I honestly believe God would have me to do. Well, then there's Lorene March and Jasper Chase and Milton Wright and Dr. West and Alexander Powers. And all these people are, they have their own lives. Powers is a railroad worker. Dr. West is a family doctor to the pastor. Milton Wright is a prominent businessman in town. And all of these people end up, Jasper Chase is a rascal of a newspaper reporter. A rascal of a newspaper reporter. He's good at digging up dirt, and he does his fair share of it. And in the beginning of the play, he takes a fancy to Virginia Page, who's just inherited millions of dollars, and she thinks he's in love with her. But rather unexpectedly, she finds out Jasper's in love with her money, and she gets a little bit miffed about that and reacts accordingly. Well, anyway, that's just a quick overview, but the play is April 5th at 7 p.m. and April 6th at 2 p.m. It's a matinee, a Saturday matinee. That's next week. So we encourage you to get your tickets now and invite your friends. Make an evening or an afternoon out of it. This play is fantastic, and you're going to be so glad you came. And those of you who don't come on April 7th, you're going to hear people talking about it, and you're going to say, oh, you can't say, I never heard about it, because you're hearing about it right now. You'll say, oh man, I'm so sorry I missed that. I don't want you to be sorry that you missed it. So get your tickets, April 5th, Friday night, and April 6th, Saturday matinee. Father, I ask you to bless everyone that's listening right now in Jesus' name, and help them to not only come themselves, but to invite other people and to help us promote this exciting event that has the potential to change our community radically for good. God bless you, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Tell your friends to watch the program, and we'll see you next week. God bless.